I think that people are kind of aware of it, but because neither Aldi nor Lidl are publicly traded, they're not so much in the consciousness. And so I think that there certainly is a risk to these larger companies, but it is a long-term risk in making sure that they stay competitive and that they're able to, offer the loyalty perks that they need to do to keep their customers close at hand.
Which then also brings me to the last point, which is online shopping. Do the smaller guys, do these discount grocers have an online shopping setup? And is that how people are truly going to be buying their groceries? Like you mentioned, Amazon, etc. Or does it really just have to be going to the store?
Well, what we find, regardless of who the retailer is, a customer who is engaged at both the store and online spend significantly more with that retailer than they do with a retailer where they only visit the store or only shop online. And so up until the pandemic, the discount grocers, the Aldis and the Lidls, had almost zero online presence. Then they forged relationships with companies like Instacart to offer, some kind of solution for people. But Aldi just recently announced that they're going to actually have their own online platform. And so they're moving into that space that was a competitive advantage for the grocers and, the Walmarts of the world. And so as they continue to build that out, they're seeking that same type of loyalty and that same type of increase in spending from somebody who is engaging at both visiting the store and visiting online.
Really amazing insight. I love it. Jen Bartashis, thank you so very much. Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Packaged Food and Retail Analyst Jen Bartashis. Let's turn now to European banks. Let's just exclude Credit Suisse for the time being. They have some idiosyncratic things they're working out. The rest of the European banks are looking at some revenue that's going to be facing an inflation test in the coming year, particularly as we're looking at the ECB that's going to continue to hike rates. For more, we want to welcome Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Banks Analyst Philip Richards. Philip, how did these big banks do in the fourth quarter, and what is the consensus outlook here for this year?
Yeah, actually, the banks at the moment are doing surprisingly well. In terms of first of all, mainly on the revenue side. I mean, obviously, the banks have been through a very difficult 5-6 years in terms of negative rates across Europe, which is a real squeeze on bank margins, and therefore their revenues have been really hurt by it. So the whole deposit balances, basically, the banks have been losing money. So coming by the middle of last year, when rates started rising very sharply, suddenly we had these huge interest rates. So suddenly these banks are making massive amounts of money that they weren't making previously. So in terms of, if you look at the numbers to the banks, they're soaring, and we're talking about revenue growth of upgrades about between 10 and 15% for a number of these banks, and they're beating estimates, analysts by similar sort of numbers.
What about provisions, though? At the same time, comes setting aside more money for losses. Where are they with that?
Yeah, well, actually, again, so I'm going to sound positive here, but there is a caveat coming at the end. But it's actually very good, because when we had the whole COVID and the crisis there, and the big slowdown that we had, the banks took a huge amount of provisions because they thought we were going into a big recession. But actually, in reality, lots of the European and the global governments stepped in and bailed out a number of companies to stop there being a big recession. So the impact is that these banks had loads of build-up provisions. So actually, when you look at the earnings today, and we saw that in the fourth quarter results so far, actually the new charges the banks will be making have been actually very low, and actually because they have to be able to release some of these provisions they made previously.
Which bank is set up the best for a mild downturn scenario, for example?
Yeah, well, I guess it's going to be the case of the banks which is best positioned for what we were saying there. So the first of all, say is in terms of the revenue boost they've had, in terms of that big on the top line, but that's going to start running out now because rates are going to not be increasing much further. So how long which banks can keep that revenue growth going, and at the same time are not going to have that big increase in provisions. So it basically depends on where the economic crisis hits. So if, for example, 2 months ago, we were thinking Germany was going into by far the biggest recession across Europe, and therefore you would expect then, the Deutsche or Commerzbank would get the increase in bad debts. But that's only swifted quite a lot over the last 2 or 3 months. And now looking at Europe would avoid a recession. And actually maybe the UK banks might be some of the worst impacted if we do go into an economic downturn. So it really does depend on what happens on the economy, because actually, as that downturn, that's going to hit the impairments.
Coming up, we're going to get more on the outlook for European banks with Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Banks Analyst Philip Richards. You're listening to Bloomberg Intelligence on Bloomberg Radio, providing in-depth research and data on 2,000 companies and 130 industries. You can access Bloomberg Intelligence through BI Go on the terminal. I'm Alex Steele, and this is Bloomberg.
World markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is Bloomberg 1130. Now, a global news update.
Crews are working to recover wreckage from an unidentified object shot down over Alaska on Friday.
The object was flying at an altitude of 40,000 feet and posed a reasonable threat to the safety of civilian flight.
National Security Council spokesman John Kirby says F-22 fighter jets shot down the car-sized object. Rescue and recovery efforts continue around the clock in Turkey and Syria as the death toll from a massive earthquake now tops 24,000. About 80,000 people are being hospitalized and over 1 million have been left homeless by Monday's 7.8 magnitude earthquake. Long Island Congressman George Santos is being ordered to formally declare his candidacy for re-election. The embattled Republican lawmaker is getting attention from federal officials about money he's raised since being elected. The Federal Election Commission sent Santos a letter ordering him to officially declare his candidacy for 2024 by March 14th. That's the latest. I'm Julie Ryan.
Now your 3-day weather forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
Plenty of sunshine today. Look for a high temperature up near 45. Tonight, partly cloudy skies, low about 35. Tomorrow, mostly cloudy. Showers are possible late in the day, a high getting up near 50. Tomorrow night, clouds, breezy, some showers likely, and a low 35. And for Monday, any showers end early, then becoming partly sunny and a high near 55. That's your Bloomberg 3-day weather forecast. I'm Susanna Palmer. Now a check of Bloomberg Sports.
The Knicks host the Utah Jazz tonight. The Knicks come off Friday's loss in Philadelphia. The Nets are home to face the Sixers. Tomorrow, Super Bowl 57 between the Eagles and Chiefs in Glendale, Arizona. Both teams finished the season at 14-3. Phillies favored by 1.5 points. It looks like Tom Brady really is done playing football. ESPN reports Brady has officially filed paperwork with the NFL and the Players Association confirming his retirement. He'll be eligible for the 2028 Hall of Fame. That's a Bloomberg Sports Update. I'm Joel Sir.
Bloomberg 1130 is where you are. Get live business news and market headlines from anywhere, 24 hours a day, via your mobile device. Listen on the iHeartRadio app. Tune in the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com.
Let's have a lot of people pedal those bikes. Interval. Burn. Burn. Come on, burn. Woo!
Performance is more exhilarating on a real road. Introducing the Audi Q5 with a 261 horsepower engine that'll take you 0 to 60 in 5.7 seconds. Always obey local speed and traffic laws.
Don't let someone else drive off in the Audi model you've always wanted. Visit your tri-state area Audi dealer to get behind the wheel of yours today, or visit AudiOffers.com for more information.
Welcome to Crash Course, a podcast about business, political, and social disruption, and what we can learn from it. I'm Tim O'Brien. Every week on Crash Course, I'm going to bring listeners directly into the arenas where epic upheavals occur, and I'm going to explore the lessons we can learn when creativity and ambition collide with competition and power. Listen to Crash Course wherever you get your podcasts.
This winter, there's only one choice for a warm weather vacation where you can enjoy everything under the sun. Welcome to the Breakers Palm Beach. Sink your toes into the soft sand of the Breakers tropical beachfront and relax at 4 refreshing pools. Unwind at the Breakers Indoor-Outdoor Spa and invigorate your senses at the resort's Oceanfront Fitness Center. Savor delectable dining at 10 distinctive restaurants. Up your game with 36 holes of golf and perfect your swing at the resort's 10 hard-true tennis courts. For those seeking a more exclusive stay, the Breakers Flagler Club is a private access hotel within the hotel, offering a luxuriously customized experience. What's even better, Paradise is just a short flight away. So now that winter has arrived, when will you? To reserve your getaway, visit thebreakers.com or call 1-800-BREAKERS today.
Get the news you need to start your day in just 15 minutes.
We begin with President Biden's State of the Union address.
Earnings from a trio of tech heavyweights weighing on markets.
Wake up with Bloomberg Daybreak, U.S. edition.
The U.S. to supply more weapons to Ukraine.
Move over Kareem, LeBron James, most points in NBA history.
Available now on your podcast feed. Each weekday morning at 6 a.m. Eastern.
President Biden staked out quite the middle road last night.
Subscribe to Bloomberg Daybreak, U.S. edition today on Apple, Spotify, and everywhere you get your podcasts. Bloomberg Radio is where you are. Get live business news and market headlines from anywhere, 24 hours a day, via your mobile device. Listen to the iHeartRadio app. Tune in the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com. You're listening to Bloomberg Intelligence with Alex Steele and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Let's get back now to our conversation on European banks and the balancing act they face this year. Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Banks Analyst Philip Richards is still with us. We've talked about the rally that a lot of these banks have already seen. As the rotation out of the U.S. and into value took hold, like no real sector except for energy benefited the most, aside from these European banks. How do we know that they're not a value trap this time again?
No, I think it's a very fair question, and I'm certainly not saying they're not a value trap, because I think it's almost been a case of banks have been almost like this sort of sector, particularly European banks, not in the US, and where the conditions are much stronger, but almost no one wants to touch these banks because they're struggling, they're barely making money, their capital ratios are very low, and any time they do sort of like they make money, you get these new bank taxes when the government sort of come in and say, we'll have that, please, take it off them. So people have been wary on them. But say now the conditions are so much better, and yes, there might be more government sort of tax grabbing going on, but the fact is that these banks are going from earning 4 or 5% return on equity, suddenly they're now doing a 9 or 10. They're actually starting to operate more like proper, profitable companies again. Yes, I say, I don't necessarily think there's a massive value to go. So we've had that big 30% bounce, which I think is justified by the fact you've had these big rate rises. But how much further the interest rate is going to rise from here? Maybe 25 or 50 basis points. So basically coming to the end of that, and at the same time, you're going to start getting those bad debts coming through from recession. And actually then the third factor is obviously you've got inflation as well. And we've actually seen that coming through on the cost line. And actually, that's kind of been hidden over so far because the revenue beats have been so good, these misses on costs have been kind of missed or ignored. But when those revenue upgrades run out, then you can start looking at these costs much more. So with inflation running at 10% as it is across a number of European countries, the staff are naturally saying, well, wait a second, we want some sort of 8 to 10% pay rise as well. And so that's going to hit the banks as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, is the cost inflationary or is it the cost to keep talent? But I guess they become one and the same. How do
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously across different sectors as well. So on the retail, I think you would say it's much more inflation-driven, where it's much more sort of salaries in line with the economy. I think when you go into the actual investment banks and the higher, not higher skill, but the much more difficult areas to get into, I think that's where it's much more talent-driven.
Compare and contrast the European banks on costs, trading revenue, and investment banking versus the U.S. guys.
Well, the U.S. banks are in a much stronger position, and you can see that. They look at the profitability they're generating. If you look at the valuation they're trading at, now those banks are trading at regularly around 2 or even 2.5 times book, whereas the number of European banks trading at more than 1 times book. You can actually pretty much, there's only really the Nordic banks and 1 or 2 exceptions across Europe. So most banks are trading at a discount still. And the reason for that is, we have got this problem that the revenues are improving, but they're still nowhere near like established, it would say, as it is in the US. So in terms of the revenue line, is mainly the issue of these banks, which are not generating enough.
I mean, I can understand why U.S. banks might be in a better spot, but it feels like in terms of catch-up potential and what's valued, the European banks have a lot more room that they could make up if things actually, macro-wise, turn out okay.
I think that's exactly right, and I think you need the regulator to kind of be on their side. I think, say, a number of because of the fiscal squeeze was having across Europe in a number of countries, when you're a politician, it's very easy to say, well, we're going to get the money from the banks. No one likes to pay its taxes. Everyone wants to be in a better financial position. So if you're attacking the banking sector, it's kind of seen as quite popular over here. Whereas I think people, I think in the US, see it more as you've got to treat companies fairly.
Yeah.
So you do have that conflict as well. But yeah, I completely agree. The banks are trading a much lower valuation. If conditions do calm, we do go into economic growth, and we see also seeing these 8, 10, 12% ROEs and becoming more established. And I think the longer-term picture has to be higher returns.
Yeah, it's like they're not priced for perfection, but you got to get all the circumstances to line up. Really interesting, Philip. Thanks a lot, Philip Richards, the Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Banks Analyst. That's this week's edition of Bloomberg Intelligence on Bloomberg Radio, providing in-depth research and data on 2,000 companies and 130 industries. And remember, you can access Bloomberg Intelligence through BI Go on the terminal. I'm Alex Steele, and stay with us because today's top stories and global business headlines are coming up right now.
From the financial capital of the world, broadcasting across the globe, this is WBBR New York, Bloomberg 1130. Now, a global news update.
The White House is denying that President Biden will give a pregame interview with Fox News on Super Bowl Sunday. Jim Forbes has more.
There have been conflicting reports of a possible interview, with earlier reports on Friday suggesting Biden would give an interview to digital outlet Fox Soul before the game. On Friday night, a White House spokesman said an interview with Fox Sports had been arranged and that Fox canceled it. The network later put out a statement indicating the interview was rescheduled, which is, quote, inaccurate. The White House says it has not signed off on any exchange between Biden and Fox. I'm Jim Forbes.
An advisor to former Vice President Mike Pence says a classified document has been found at Pence's Indiana home. That statement came on Friday after a 5-hour search of the house that was described as thorough and unrestricted. The Department of Justice also took 6 documents without classified markings. The advisor says Pence ordered his legal team to cooperate in the case. Recovery efforts are underway in Alaska after the downing of an unidentified object. Reporter Ali Rafa has more.
Teams are searching through ice and snow, looking for any debris they can from this object that was shot down over the Alaskan coast yesterday by an F-22.
The Pentagon says President Biden gave the order to shoot down the car-sized object hovering at 40,000 feet because it was posing a reasonable threat to civilian air traffic. It's not clear yet just what the object was or where it came from. The incident comes after a Chinese surveillance balloon was shot down near the coast of South Carolina 1 week ago. At least 4 people remain hospitalized after a jetliner being towed from a gate at Los Angeles International Airport struck a shuttle bus. Authorities say 2 shuttle passengers, the bus driver and the driver of the jet, suffered stable to moderate injuries. The incident never caused any delays at LAX. I'm Julie Ryan.